my guest here. So this is Jürgen over at what is it? Six beers, nine wives. That's
Right.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
um, but
I just made that up in one drunk night
yeah,
because I'm friends with Darcy, six strings, nine lives. So yeah,
sure. It's definitely seemed like a Jurgen's approach to that concept there.
yeah.
But yeah, I've actually talked a few times about sort of audio stuff, and when I first started doing it on my channel, you gave me in your first response to my uh, "Can you be a metalhead and an audiophile?" was really eye-opening because you had a lot of insight and very specific sort of detail in terms of what your experience was as an individual, and then kind of just it was cool to get your thoughts there. So um one, I just wanted to say, like, thank you for all the feedback, but as soon as I got that, I thought, like, really want to actually sit down with you for a longer conversation to hear what your thoughts are. I mean, the two major things that I wanted to talk about that I thought you'd be helpful in terms of providing some guidance, not just to myself, but to the audience and other people's in the metal VC, was you've been collecting and a part of the metal community for, I mean, I would imagine most of your life. I know that you were in, I don't know if you're still in a band technically, but
No, no.
no. But you were part of the metal scene. You've been collecting for decades now.
Yeah. I started
Um,
collecting in 1986.
and then just how much sort of hi-fi gear has changed since 1986. It's kind of gone in waves, right? Like there was this sort of golden era of hi-fi that appeared in the 1970s and 80s into the 90s, and then it got a little bit, once digital entered, it got a little bit messy. And then you had I thought a rant video not that long ago talking about the vinyl community or collectors nowadays,
the modern vinyl trend that we are living through.
and things that they're kind of like that are frustrating to you,
And what the fuck I hate about it.
but it also spoke to sort of like what happened, I think, in a generation like that I am a part of.
My thoughts make me angry. That is why I do this video.
I got into music and was, during the middle of the 90s, as I'm around 9, 10 years old. And I don't really consider myself like a vinyl collector, until my 20s, maybe mid 20s, somewhere in the mid 2000s. We didn't grow up really with like our parents, who had most likely a great record collection, two, any experience in hi-fi. Like my parents had a bare minimum, and that's what I inherited. So there's like a whole bunch of information that was kind of, and understanding that was lost in that time period. So reaching out to someone like yourself, you kind of connect the dots. You've seen it come in different waves. When did you start to care about what you were listening to your favorite records or CDs on?
Okay, my history with HIFI equipment started already in the late 70s, early 80s. My parents had a huge stereo with a record player. My mom had a huge record, not a huge record collection, but she had, I don't know, 300, 400 albums. And as a kid, I already listened to her records and I know how to operate with a record player. When I was 11 in 1986, I got like, do you know these compact stereo systems we had back in the 80s that had a receiver, a tape deck, and a record player built in one housing?
Yeah.
And that was the day when I started collecting records. I got some money from my grandma. I got the stereo from my parents, and I went to the record store and bought the very first Iron Maiden album. That is where it all started. I listened to my stuff on that compact stereo, which sounded like complete crap, of course. And already when I was 14, I had I don't know what is in English, confirmation. So you go to the church and confirm your faith again.
Yeah.
And it's a huge celebration here. So I got some money in. From that money, I bought a separate amp, a CD player back then. That's when where CD players were coming up.
Yeah, that's like mid 80s.
That was late 80s, yeah.
Late 80s. Okay. So it's like
Yeah.
that's when CDs were like the big new thing that was going to change the hi-fi world, right?
Yeah, right. And I connected the compact stereo so I could use my my vinyl player, connected it to that amp, and I bought some small speakers. And that is when I started to realize, oh whoa, there's a huge difference in sound. So I already knew the the stereo from my parents, and it had a better sound, of course, than my compact stereo. So that is when I started to realize it. And then, of course, in the school vacation, I got to work, and from there it started. I started to change things up, try new amps, try a new CD player, buy a separate record player. Then, as I got a little bit older, got a little bit more money, experimented with cartridges and cables, and yeah, that's how it goes. So my equipment over the years, I think I had 50 to 60 record players, CD players, amps. Yeah.
Did you feel like, because I'm guessing the music you were listening to is probably like just like we're talking about was predominantly heavy metal, punk. I know you have an interest in like 1970s prog stuff as well. We'll kind of get into that later on, but did you feel like as you were experimenting with this stuff and learning more about it, that it was a shared interest amongst your peers? Because I personally feel like I'm kind of getting an interest in this, but most of the other, like the part of the metal VC are like, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. Like, this is absolute nonsense. It's a bunch of bullshit. Like, stop wasting your money buying on spitting on speakers. Just buy more to your collection. Like, I don't feel that the reason I'm reaching out to you, Jürgen, is I am alone here. So I just, I kind of wanted to get like, since you've been around it for so long, as you and your sort of peers, your friends, other metalheads are picking up more records, was it just yourself that had an interest in this? And did you feel like everyone else just kind of didn't care? Like, what was the culturally, I guess, a little bit different going on then?
Yeah, it was basically the same. I bought a lot of records and CDs, yes, of course, but I also from time to time spent some money on equipment. And all my friends were, why? The old stuff is good enough. And I thought, I'll have to try out different things. Because, like I said, I realized that there's a huge difference in sound. But my friends didn't care. They played their little cheap stereos for decades. I think it's just funny. If you have a real audiophile, they only care about their equipment. They have very, very small collections. They have a couple of jazz records, Pink Floyd, Dire Straits, right. The Brothers in Arms, which is like the sound thing, and very few records in the collection. Maybe some SA CDs, so these super audio CDs. On the other hand, you have collectors that have a huge amount of music, and they really dive into that music, but they don't fucking care about their sound.
Yeah. You actually had a story. I know you kind of wanted to bring that up because we're talking about this here. Because who came to visit you? It was Cloudy, Milder, Metal Mickey. There was a group of them, right?
Mark G. Yeah. And they were sitting in my living room, and we were listening to music. And when they got home, especially Mike, Metal Mickey, he wrote back, "I'm listening to that same music on my stereo at home, and it sounds like shit."
Right. It is a little bit like, I do feel though, to your point, what at this point I'm feel like I'm building towards is I want a system to match my music as opposed to building a system and trying to find music that works in it, which I think is what the audiophile community does. Is like,
Yeah.
it's like I'm going to spend all this time and money on the best equipment, and I need to find the very limited amount of music options that I can play through this that will sort of meet its sort of demands or meet some sort of criteria. Where it's like I'm going to collect, to your point, something like, Razor's Violent Restitution, and then I need a player, I need a system that's going to highlight that record, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because it's one that you mentioned in your ranting video, versus I think I do have it here. Hold on. In that video, now this is the one that you had complained about. I think you've talked about this before. That now this is the high roller repress.
Mm-hmm.
That you thought I think someone at High Roller who's handling some of the reissues and doing the mastering on it. I think it's on 180 gram,
Mm-hmm.
black vinyl. And you said you've got a flimsy little steam hammer pressing that you think actually is a superior sound to it.
I think mastering is mixing and mastering nowadays is a little bit of problem. Back then, everything was done by ear, what sounded good. Now you've got everything digital, and you do it. It is more now a visual thing to keep everything perfect, so it looks perfect, but it doesn't really match with your ears. So, yeah, back then it was like an ear thing, and you thought, well, it sounded cool. It probably, if you put on one of those very old flimsy records and you visualize that on a computer, it would look like a mess probably, but it sounds good. And nowadays you do it just by looking at your meters, and no, there's a little peak that shouldn't be here, but maybe that little peak would be pleasing to your ear.
Yeah.
So the guy I know from High Roller is a friend of mine. He's Patrick V. Engel. He does the mastering for Metal Blade Records, High Roller Records, stuff like that. He's an audio restorator. He lives about 20 minutes from here. I know him since way over 25 years. And that is his job. And I know he's doing it by just looking at a computer.
We're going to talk about some records later on. But you were cool enough to kind of put together a little sort of home tour of the two main systems that you have in your home. So I'm going to see if I can pull these up here. And you gave us a little narration, but at any point in this, you kind of want me to, I think I'll stop, and I have some follow-up questions for you. Because I do think, trying to find the right equipment that's going to sound best with our music is something that is a great sort of amount of there's debate surrounding that. Like, it's a waste of your time. Your music is trash. Doesn't matter what you listen to it on. But I think like you've got a few things here that I just want the audience to get a chance to look at, and then we can talk about sort of the benefits to it and why it may work for metal music. So the first one here, I think, is this is the secondary room. So hold on one second.
Living room. Okay.
Okay, here's our living room setup.
Yeah. Right.
And I'll kind of let you get going on this explanation, then I'll pause it in a second.
Let's start with the speakers. These are Tannoy D700 from the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay, so you got a cat record in the back. That's awesome. Perfect. In the setup there. So Tannoy is a British loudspeaker company, correct?
Yeah, right.
So I'm going to let you kind of, in this video, you talk a little bit about some of the unique features to this speaker. But here, I'll let you kind of the video. Anything you want to add at this point, or do you want me to just keep the video going?
The reason why I choose Tannoy is I got those speakers by chance. I found them in my local record store actually, and that was from someone who died, and his wife was giving away, not giving away, selling the audio equipment, and I found those. Those usually are on the second-hand market. They go between 1,500 or 2,000 euros, something like that, and I got those for 700.
Yeah. So here, I'll let this go because it's a key feature to this speaker that we'll kind of get into in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
These monsters weighed around 100 pounds. So, the special thing about them, I don't like full-on horn speakers, but I like the sound of a horn tweeter. So, these are combined normal speakers with horns. Let's move over to the stereo.
Okay, so let's just talk about that for a quick moment. So one of the things that is consistently talked about in the hi-fi community, at least, is the that horn speakers work really well for metal music. And I think the thought process is, one, they're usually very high efficiency, right? So, oh yeah, thank you for the thumbs up. So that works really well, like dynamically, right? It doesn't take a lot of power to get the speaker to play music, right? So for something that's dynamically challenging, like heavy metal music, it works really well. But the other thing is that it almost mirrors the PA system that you're going to find at a live show.
Yeah.
Right. Usually you see like a line array, like a series of horns that handle and then there's a massive cabinet that's usually handling like the lower bandwidth, like bass and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you like horn speakers? And then but you did decide to go with the Tannoy here in the tweeter section. So just why that style choice?
Horn speakers. They have this mid-range sound, and you can of course you can get a lot of bass out of them, but you need the right amplifier to power them. So in a home equipment, if you listen to music really loud all the time, horn speakers might work. I can't listen to music very loud. Yeah, I've got people living with me, so
yeah. So that's also what's cool about that is I think it's called a coaxial design, where you have a woofer and then a tweeter inside of it. So I know that also really helps with, I think, stereo imaging, right? Because you have the same sort of sound, like when two different, the mid-range essentially, and then the tweeter or the upper frequencies coming from the exact same driver. I think that works really well with stereo imaging. I know that's one of the benefits. Would you say that's probably one of the attractions to this for you as well?
yeah, because I've got the same listening position, and I don't have the same listening position in my living room all the time. I change a little bit up and down. The up and down moves if I lay down on the couch or I sit on the couch. And if you got a separate tweeter, if you with your head, if you're under the tweeter, the highs get a little bit lost, and if you're right the tweeters on the same line as your ears, it can be a little bit piercy. So that one is really nice because yeah, it makes a round sound.
Awesome. So we'll give past the speakers here. We'll move on to the next little portion.
let's move over to the stereo. Sorry for the mess. I'm rearranging some rooms and yeah, I'm selling some stuff. The record player. This is a project called The Classic, and I use the normal Autophone Blue. I've got a spare one. This originally came with a Silver, but I don't use that. I don't like the sound of it.
Okay, so I'm curious, is it like for turntables, do you have a preference in terms of like direct drive, belt drive, anything like that? Does it matter to you at all? Do you notice a difference?
I had a couple of direct drive record players, but nowadays I prefer the old school way with a belt drive. And all the two main record players are sub chassis players. So the actual vinyl playing thing is decoupled from the housing, so it won't cause any vibrations.
It's crazy. Is it what was the brand here? Was it a project? Yeah, right.
It was a project, yeah. But
Okay.
that is probably the last project I had 4 or 5, and after a couple of years, every single one had the same problem, and the driving motor fucked up.
Okay, well, I can understand why that would push you away here. So we'll keep going.
And wait a second, and I don't have Autophone Silver. As a backup, I have the Autophone Bronze, 2 Bronze.
Okay, which I think is at the step up from the blue.
From the blue, yeah.
I don't
On
like
stage.
tube amps, but I like the sound of tubes. So this is a phono preamp, a tube preamp. This is the Autophone, no, the Project Tube Box DS.
So just a quick moment. I don't like tube amps, but I like the sound of tubes. So I think that's one of the best quotes of the videos here. So just explain a little bit what you mean by that, and because I think you're talking about where you want to put tubes in the signal path.
Right.
So you have here, this is a phono stage. So basically that's doing the amplification that comes out of your turntable, and that's where you're choosing to place the tubes.
Right.
Because as opposed to tubes existing in the as a your power amplifier. Just out of curiosity, have you played with that, and like did it not turn out well, or why do you like to have like solid state or transistor? It's a huge debate in the audio community. So why do you prefer to have a solid state power amp, but you do like tubes in the phono stage or in the preamplification stage?
It's a little bit the same with the horn tweeters and horn speakers and the tube speakers, the tube amps, the pure tube power amps. You need to play them at a certain volume, otherwise they don't get the real sound across. So what over the decades we had those normal power amps. What do you call them?
Like a solid state or transistor power? Yeah.
Transistor amps. And they are nowadays, since the 70s, they are really, really good. And tube amps use really, really old technology, and they haven't developed it any further. So in my opinion, a transistor amp sounds better for home use. It's another thing if you play guitar on a stage. I would totally prefer a tube amp, totally, but not for playing music at home.
Yeah, let me just quick, because you play. I see there's a guitar there in the background, right? And so you play guitar. Now, okay. Well, and the loosest definition of what I'm trying to get into, like, I've had people who've reached out to me who've said that, because a lot of guitarists, specifically electric guitar, is amplified using tubes, that would also should sort of mirror what is happening in your home. Like I had someone reach out to me and say that there's actually some synergy, or like there's purpose in having a tube power section for your speakers at home, because it's going to mirror a similar sort of amplification that you're going to get from a heavy metal guitarist on stage. So, I mean, I'm just curious, do you notice any difference, or what's been your sort of experience? I'm guessing when you play guitar, is it a tube amp on stage?
On stage, it should be a tube amp. If you play at home at a lower volume, I think it doesn't matter. Okay. So, yeah, and it like I said, it's the same with the horn speakers. You need a certain volume to get the full sound of it. If you play a tube amp on a low volume, the whole effect is like blown in the wind. So I think it's useless. I wanted to have a little bit of a tube sound, so I decided I want that after the signal from the record player. That's not I listened to a couple of tube amps with only CDs at a friend's house, and to make it simple, a transistor amp is simply faster. Yeah, the tube amp works slower, so you can hear the delay, but you can feel that it doesn't really work.
Yeah, I just. Yeah, I 100%, like, it's always been, my experience talking to other, at least audiophiles, who say, like, yeah, there are some tube amps that are faster than others, and tube amps can be more neutral. It's not just like the 1970s, 80s, everything turns to, molasses, and it's just big syrupy mid-range, which I think is what old tube amps were. But still, if you want to prioritize speed, articulation, attack, transient, like all that stuff that has to do, for me, like, I pay attention when you have music that's moving at 200 and plus beats per minute. You want that. And it's difficult for a tube amp to replicate what solid state can do there. So, okay, I'm going to put this back on stage. We'll keep going with your system here.
Record player. I use a really old Yamaha CD player. I love the sound of these old CD players. I think they're way better than what you can buy now. And as you can see, I use special absorber feed. Yes, even for the CD player. This is a CDX 470. This one doesn't even have a remote control. So that says how old this one is. My tape deck looks like a CD player. This is a Denon DRS 640. This is the standard version. Opens like that. Nice little tape deck.
Okay, so wanted to pause here. You talked about something here that Simon, in his video talking about his equipment, also brought up, which is there's like this time period where brands that now are selling for pretty cheap prices, at one point in time were creating some pretty high-end products. So he, I think, has some, I think it was TIAC, but he has like a TIAC amp and CD player. It's kind of like the same sort of series. They all have a similar design and like aesthetic to them, but he called it these are all old badge, I think was the term he used. But like it's important when you're talking about CD players and cassette players during that time period when those brands were creating some really high-end stuff. And I think over the years they've kind of, for price point reasons, or they've been purchased by larger sort of corporate sort of entities, where they're all about trying to get the greatest amount of, I guess, profit margin off their product. They aren't creating the same kind of high quality stuff. So, for example, that the CD player you mentioned there, right? That's probably that level, the CD mechanism in that is probably much more elevated than a lot of the stuff that's being built nowadays.
Yeah, and back then, the companies they built in the interior are much higher quality transistors, and the whole plates they built in, the soldering on it was done by hand. Now you've got everything manufactured by machines and robots and stuff like that, and the little components in there are lower quality. So you've got that thing with 3D printers, for example. You can print at such an amount, and at a certain point they just don't work anymore. And you've got the same thing with modern HIFI stuff. And the next thing is a CD player. You can normally easily repair these old things. If you've got a problem with the loading system, there are like two small wheels and a rubber band in between. You can change that. You can just take off the hood and you can repair it yourself. Or the laser gets dirty. Yeah. No problem repairing those old thingies. I had another CD player right here, and it broke down last Friday, and I unscrewed it. It was a Yamaha as well, but it was so cramped with crap. I had to get out the whole loading system and stuff like that. So they are not easy to repair. These old things are.
And now, at the moment, I've got a stand-in amp. I usually have a 70s amp from 78. Also Yamaha. The other one is called A1. But it broke down. So this is the stand-in amp. And it's an AS501. I like the sound of it. I don't know if I'm going to repair the A1 and just keep that one, because I usually listen to music in my music room.
Okay, so I first saw this and I thought, I've got to bring this up with, look at those tone controls. So I think you've got the bass on the far left here, all the way turned up on this. But yeah, it's another thing. Like, do you like having tone controls on your amp or preamp?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's another like major hot point is like, oh, you're corrupting the music, or it wasn't intended to be listened to that way, or yada yada. But I looked at that when you first sent me the video, and I thought, oh man, he is absolutely going to town with those tone controls here. So, yeah, you like having that kind of flexibility, and just you don't. It's more about like, is it you trying to fix the sound within your room per se, or is it just trying to alter the mastering? What is it for you?
Yeah, it's fixing the sound in my specifically in my room. I know there's a lot of discussion between audiophiles if you have tone control or not. But on most more modern amps, you've got the pure direct, so you can surpass the whole system.
Right.
And you've got the direct source. If I listen to metal and I listen to it on tone control off, it sounds a little bit like flat.
Right.
Especially in my room. It's the living room is really big, and you've seen my speakers, and they need a little bit of a drive. Those big speakers.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next is the real music room, which is sort of the reference room for you. So I'll bring that one up here for you.
As you can see, I like tall standing speakers. These are way smaller than the other ones in the living room. That room is a lot smaller though. Okay, these are audiophile. They're called Spark, a German brand. I like standing speakers, so for that small room I needed to find the right ones, and these were quite right.
So this is my biggest, like, next time I got some new speakers here, and like in a month or so I'll do like another update video on the changes I've made to my system. But that was one thing. I have not found the right floor stander for my room. To your point about, like, you've got a cool little, I'll just bring this back to the stage for just to talk about how that room looks, because you're kind of sitting up against that wall, right
Yeah.
now where I'm looking at you. It's almost, it looks like a horn loaded room, the way it's shaped, right? So acoustically it kind of opens up based on that back wall there.
Yeah, because there is right there is the roof. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that can sometimes work out well, but I think this is like long term. I'll probably have to, you know, the difficulty I have with floor standing speakers is my seating position, like where I'm in right now, is kind of also serves as my office. So I'm kind of at like much taller height than you would sometimes be if you were on a couch, right? So it changes. I need like a floor stander that's whatever 45, 44, 46 inches tall. And I have heard a lot of good things. This is a brand that I think gets a whole lot better distribution in Europe than it does in the States.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of good things about it, and have had people from Europe reach out to me and recommend this brand. So I'm glad to see that you kind of confirm their thoughts there.
Oh yeah, finding speakers for this little room was a little bit of a task. If you got a floor standing speaker that is too big, the sound can almost roll you over.
Yeah. It just booms in your room. You don't actually.
Where I put my speakers, I can't have the right distance to the wall. That is very important for a floor standing speakers to keep them away from walls.
Does that model have a rear port or rear opening, or is it a sealed design? Do you know?
No, this is completely sealed.
Yeah. So just for people who are curious about what we're talking about, usually if you have a sealed design, a speaker that doesn't have any sort of openings where there's like a bass reflex where the air is going to be exiting the speaker, that's really beneficial in smaller living environments or smaller listening environments. You get sort of less sort of rear noise coming out of the speaker. So anyway, I was curious about that, but that would probably work perfectly. And then they also tend to be faster. I don't know if you've heard that as well, but
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's keep going with this reference system.
I needed to find the right ones, and these were quite right. The record player. This is vintage equipment now. We've got the Thorens TD160E. Looks like that. And the cartridge I use is a MC system. Now this is the Autophone Quintet Black. This has got such a fine sound. Just right to listen to detailed music.
Okay, so I want to talk about that MC. I think for people who don't know what Jürgen's referring to, it's moving coil. as opposed to moving magnet. Usually moving coil cartridges are a little bit more of the high end. So when did you make that jump? Like, okay, I'm going to invest in a different kind of cartridge, and because usually they are, to your point, a much more detailed cartridge usually. But they also require, it's a little bit more of an involved process, making sure you have the correct phono preamp and so on and so forth to go along with it. So, what's been your experience with, cartridge, hunting for heavy metal music?
That Quintet Black came with another record player I bought. So it was pure coincidence. That was the first time I ever experienced MC system. And I tried it out. I let it play in for, when I bought the other record player, for 100 hours or so. That is what a needle usually needs to get the sound right. And all of a sudden, after a couple of listens, the sound developed. And I was so surprised. I never experienced the difference. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a Ordophon 2M Black, which is sort of their last end of the, what do you want to call it, moving magnet. And then before you make the jump, so I haven't jumped into the moving coil world yet. But that's my upgrade path down the road will look at something like that. But I am curious to try that out, because I knew it's like the step up, and as my sort of experience with a vinyl rig has changed over the years, I am curious to give that a try.
So my cartridge is around $800. So dollar and euros are almost the same anyway. So let's keep it dollars.
Yeah.
Around 800. The MM Black that you have is around 600, right?
Yeah.
And there's a smaller version of mine. I think it's called Quintet Red. That might be the same price range that the MM Black has.
Do you have any opinions on like the level of turntable, what like the cost ratio between the turntable and the cartridge should be?
That turntable that I have behind me is worth around 200-250 maximum euros.
Okay.
And
Like,
the cartridge is 4 times that. I
had
think the old tone arms on these vintage players, they are built for a more diverse range of styluses or cartridges. So you don't have that problem. Maybe modern tone arms on modern record players, you have to see what you can use on them. It was a little bit. I had a little bit of a problem with the counterweight, because the MC system is pretty heavy, and I had to move the counterweight right back to where it almost falls off. But that was the only issue I had.
Like my 2M Black has the stylus shape requires a specific vertical tracking angle. And that was something that I had to double check when I bought it for my turntable, was like, is this going to work? So I, going to looking at the specifications on Ordophon's website and what they recommended, making sure, to your point, like the tracking force would work, but also the tone arm was going to be at the correct angle that was going to go along with it, like that.
CD player, again, a vintage one, like in the living room. This is a Sony CDP 212. This one has a remote control though. The tape deck. This is the bigger version of the one that I have in the living room. This is 3-head tape, but works basically the same. This is called a DRS 810. The preamp is a Luxman CO2.
Okay, I just want to stop here. So, one, we the same points you made about in the previous system about the older vintage sort of CD player and tape deck. I'm super jealous about that tape deck. That's one part of my system that I'm lacking. But when I heard, I think in your comments that you had Luxman gear, people who don't know, that is like an incredibly well respected Japanese brand that's been around for a while. So I was super curious to take a look at this system when you first got it, what it actually looked like. But I just wanted to say, like, when I knew I asked you to make it a little bit of these short videos for your system. But when I knew I was going to get a chance to look at your Luxman kit, the audiophile nerd in me definitely got a little excited. So I'll bring that back here to the stage.
The amp itself is a MO3, so those are two different series. I would love to get the MO2 because it has analog voltmeters. This one doesn't, but the sound is just fine. And now I'm gonna keep quiet a little bit. This amp, just the amp, weighs around 80 to 85 pounds. And now listen, when I turn it on, you can hear.
It didn't come across because it makes if you turn it on, it makes a hum.
Yeah.
Like you know when you start a Tesla coil before you can shoot out the lightning.
Yeah,
something like that. You turn it on and it's like
radiating. Yeah. No, what I'm gonna do, one, when I saw that video, I wanted to take some photos just at sort of what you see internally inside of that amp, because that was, a very serious power amplifier that Luxman had put together. I think it was sold through the 80s into the 90s. There was like a time period in which that was out there. But to your point, that's 80 pounds, and it's a behemoth of a power amp. I wanted to, in the photos that I'll show, it also shows like the different sort of capacitors, meaning at any given time, it's not just a question of how many watts are coming out of the amp, but how much sort of like energy can be dynamically stored inside of it. So when you do have major changes in music, the amp's not catching up to respond. But when I show the photos, you'll see all the different things that are built into that. That look pretty cool. So let's start now that we've got like what you usually will be listening to your records on. I was curious to actually show off at least some of your recommendations in terms of what we should be listening to, or you think are important that every metalhead should not just have in their collection because A, they're great records, but two, they'll help you make sort of educated decisions about what kind of components you'd want to buy. Like it will reveal either something about a system that potentially they should know. So I don't know if you any records that you would pull with you or you'd recommend for that kind of a circumstance.
If I would go to an audio show, I would take with me some old German krautrock or prog rock, whatever you want to call it, because the studios back then in Germany, they were superior to any other studios in the world, using only analog equipment to record that stuff. I would probably take these two with me. So that is Eloy's Dawn and Ocean.
Okay.
Back in the day, I prepared a little history of what I used to play to test out my stereo and what I'm using now.
So why would you? I'm just curious. Why would you take those two Eloy records? Is that what you said?
Because they've got the bass, they've got the the mid range, and they've got the extremely precise highs in the ride and crash cymbals.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, when were those records released?
Those are 70s. I think Dawn was released in 75, if I'm correct, 76. So that is one of my favorite prog albums
Okay.
ever.
Okay, see, like this is why you bring Jürgen in. Okay, see, it's to take the mastering that was happening in the studio in the 1970s, right? The way they were recording those records were, very different, and I think that's something that shows up in a well set up analog system.
Yeah, they did a lot of experiment in the mixing, even in the recording. I don't know if they cared about mastering so much back in the day, because the recorded source already sounds awesome. So yeah, I think rule number one, if you want to test out new stereo, you should use music that you would like to hear on that stereo. And if you like to hear to listen to diverse music, be it normal heavy metal, death metal, black metal, or you like the grunge stuff, or you like hard rock, like, I don't know, Whitesnake or stuff like that, you like prog rock, it's all different. So you have to know the music. And if you listen to different genres, try and pick something from everyone.
Okay, so we got our first two Eloy records, some 1970s prog here. I'll pull you up and let's move on to the next recommendation from Jürgen.
So when I was starting out being interested in HIFI equipment, I always used that one, the original pressing of South of Heaven. The sound on the album overall is not good, but what this record does is it has left-right separation that you can find on very many albums. So you get the guitars are strictly panned to the left and to the right, the different guitars. So you've got that that stereo feeling. That is why I put that on. And everybody knows the intro, and when the song starts with the drum starts, that it's not much on that record, but that is you can check out the dynamics of a pair of speakers, for example. So that's why I used that.
I don't know how you feel about this, but that record to me also has tons of atmosphere to it. Which is like, as much as Rain and Blood was like an all-out sort of assault, and all my like whatever hardcore punk friends loved that there were thrash songs that were a minute and a half long. To me, South of Heaven also has like an eerie gloominess to it, and I haven't heard like that first pressing and on a system like that, but that would probably be something I would take into consideration when listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. What's the next one there for you?
The next one basically was a mistake, but when I was young, I didn't care. I used that one because I thought overall the album has a great sound. Now listening back to it, this is also an original. When I listening back to it now, the sound on the album isn't good. It's all messed up. It's blur. You've got like five or six guitars all over the place, and then the solos on top, and you can hear the drums are not played right through live. They cut it everywhere, and nowadays I can hear it. Yeah, probably the wrong choice.
Right. If you want to listen to a record that has a lot of failings, I think most people would have picked out Injustice for All, but it's cool that you pulled Master for Puppets there.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next thing, that one. Again, okay. The first song is totally right for checking out a new stereo. I know it inside out. You've got the synthesizer intros and stuff like that. And when they start playing faster, you can check out how good the tweeters on your new speakers, or the transition from a new amp is on the highs, because on that one, the right cymbal that Nico McBrain plays, it stands out. So back then I played that. Later I changed to Peace of Mind because it's got such a natural sound. Not good, but it has a certain vibe. So it's, if you buy new audio equipment, you shouldn't go just for technical details and stuff. You have to absorb the vibe. You're gonna use it over a couple of years. So yeah, it's all about the feeling.
I think that's all to your point early on about how mastering is done now. You know, like it's one thing to look at sort of very specific measurements, right, on a playback. It's another thing to actually listen to it in person and how you sort of personally interpretate it. So, okay,
Yeah.
Okay, let's go next record then.
This one, play it to an audiophile and he would probably kill you.
Okay.
Back in the day. This is more of a what can a stereo take?
I got you.
From the source material. You know, this is a deep vibrating mess. Yeah, you can check out your system if the system can handle that.
Right, and so let's just take that record there as an example. One of the things like you don't want, or I don't want a system to do, is also tame that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it may be offensive to, let's say, the rest of the audiophiles in the room, but if you're going to like mute or diminish what is unique about like that guitar sound, it's completely like you're missing out what makes it incredible.
If a system gets too analytic, it can take away the fun.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit like castration.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well said. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on from Left Hand Path.
In later years, when I got the vinyl version of that, Anathema Silent Enigma, this record has a lot of things to offer, a lot of dynamics. It's got still has the heavy parts and the Celtic Frosty riffing, but it also has got a little bit of female vocals, acoustic guitars, and with that one you can also check out the dynamics with heavier music on your system. If the system doesn't take it, yeah. So that is basically, you've got both worlds of music that I listen to in one combined.
Those softer, quiet parts and the like super extreme death doom kind of thing going on. Okay.
And a little bit in the same way is that one, Uriah Heep, Salisbury.
Yeah.
The old pressing and the title song is 20 minutes long, and it has everything to offer, from very, very quiet parts to that mid. You've got that, not a bass solo, but that bass section in there. So you can check out the whole, what is it called?
Like an audio bandwidth sort of deal? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you want to have some really fuzzy stuff that is well produced, again, a little bit like the Entombed record. Let's see what new equipment can take these two. Blues for the Red Sun.
That was interesting. I didn't know that would be in your recommendation there, but yeah. It is. Do you think that, but the production is well produced, and you think that, like, is it just the warmth of those records?
it's the warmth of those records and the overdriven guitar sound and the wall of sound when everyone is playing together, and you've got the John Garcia's voice is always a little bit strangely produced, and on some very analytic stereos, this sounds like you have a band and you've got the singer standing over there, but it all has to blend together.
Nice.
So a little bit like the Entombed thing.
Yeah, yeah.
In more recent years, I looked out for producers that I really, really like, and I hate Kiss, but Kiss had once had a great producer called Bob Ezrin. So these two, the newer Deep Purple stuff.
Deep Purple.
Yeah.
So and that's cool. I did not expect that. So basically, just there, even though it's, when were those released? I'm curious for someone who's lost touch with what Deep Purple's doing nowadays.
Oh, those are from the 2010s.
Okay.
So
cool.
Newer stuff.
Yeah, so that's interesting to find recommendations, newer stuff that are just. Do you feel like it's because the producer's been around the sort of classic rock sound for such a long time that was taken into consideration, or what do you think?
Yeah, he has the experience. He knows how to record live, so live drums, and he knows how to use room acoustics, and you can hear that.
Yeah,
and that is what you normally. Smaller bands don't go to studios; they record it at home. They may use an actual drum kit, but they use a room that is not made for recording in it. So they've got the microphones just at the toms and floor toms and the cymbals itself. They don't use the room. Bob Ezrin on that still does use that. And I wanted to check out some more modern production on my stereo as well. So
yeah,
the last two, apart from of course Eloy, I always used that one since I was 15 years old. So
okay,
and it's still the same copy.
I was hoping we get a couple of prog rock records out of this. So I'm glad you brought those.
And this last one may be the strangest one I pulled. Some fusion jazz rock. So this is Chick Corea. I don't know if you heard of them. The band is called Return to Forever. 70s records again. Fantastic productions. You've got the jazzy live drums. You've got a lot of organ on it because Chick Corea is an organ player or a keyboard player. You've got jazzy stuff, fast stuff. You can check out how fast your amp or your speakers respond.
When I was at the audio show, I had them play Mahavishnu Orchestra, and it was just because of the complexity of the music. Like it was, it wasn't going to be as heavy as like the metal stuff, but if you wanted something that wasn't going to just turn whatever you were listening to into a blurred mess, that kind of stuff is so dynamically challenging and intricate that it's a good sort of way to test out a system, I think, to your point about. Okay.
I want to talk about cables.
I was actually going to avoid a cable conversation.
Just a little bit about cables. I know you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars for cables alone. I just use simple, thick ones, and I even don't use them with plugs. I screw them in naked, so bare. But these cables, they are not even that expensive, but they are for car stereos. So the protection thing is different to audio equipment. normal audio equipment. So in a car, you have a condensed room with a lot of electronics going on. So the cables have to do special work. That's why I use car equipment wiring. Same here. I don't. If I get new equipment, I throw away these, and I use those also for car equipment.
Well, little hi-fi hack with Jürgen. I had no idea. By the way, for people who don't know why this is hilarious, this might be the most divisive, volatile point of conversation in all of hi-fi. The amount of hatred you can find on online forums and other YouTube pages regarding how cables are pure snake oil trying to rob audiophiles blind is the most controversial subject. So the fact that you threw that in there, perfect. Okay, well, just kind of as we're kind of reaching the end here and rounding out this conversation, like, one, I just wanted to get a little bit in terms of advice. I guess it's kind of a two-part question. One is, what are the biggest mistakes or like misconceptions you made about this as you've been collecting over the years? Something you realized, and to your point, like in the video that you made about younger collectors like myself or potentially younger who are getting into picking up vinyl records for the first time, or building a collection, and they're picking up their first turntable, etc., looking for the first pair of speakers. Like, what were the mistakes that you made over the years personally as someone who collects this kind of music? What kind of advice would you have for younger sort of collectors who are getting into putting together their first system?
The biggest mistake was when I was younger, I always bought new equipment right from the store, and I got not in a HIFI store or something like that. I got into a mall and seek out an electronic shop and go to the HIFI section, and they usually have they have good stuff. I'm not slagging them, but it's too expensive. Go find something on the second-hand market, so you can try out. If it doesn't work for you, you can get rid of it without losing much money. That was a big mistake I made. Try to go somewhere where you can test it out. If I had a perfect example. I've got this small room, and the stereo shop that I went to get these audiophysics speakers, they have a listening room that has exactly the same size as my room. In a stereo shop, you can try out equipment. You can take it home with you. And in HIFI shops, they have almost every, at least here in Germany, they have a second-hand section. And listen to these people. You don't have to obey them, but listen to what they say, and listen to older people who have experiences with record players and stuff like that. I got that record player in about 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. I bought that one on purpose. I had one before. It was cheap, and it was better sounding than the 2,500 euro record player that was standing there before. Use old equipment. Fucking clean your fucking records.
That is next level. You've got an official record cleaner there. Awesome. Yeah. I have yet to. Everything I've been doing is by hand right now, so I don't have an official, like a really high end sort of record cleaner like that. But
do you wipe them clean?
Yeah. I've got like specific sort of vinyl resolution, sort of cleaner, and a thing that I use to clean them off. But
okay, so it's a little bit like the window cleaner that also disappears quite fast.
Yeah. It's made specifically for records to preserve them and clean them and stuff. But I know Yeah, yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
But basically just realize it's like a physical, right? Get the correct sleeves to take care of it, especially, if you're buying something that's meaningful to you, you want to, there's only a finite number of them, most likely in like an original pressing or something like that. So it's worth taking care of them.
Pull them out of the sleeves you get with the records. I always use these black polylined. You can have a different taste. You can take the transparent ones or whatever, the white ones.
Yeah.
And I always clean new records.
Okay,
if I rip off the plastic, because in the pressing plants you have seen how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
They come off the machine and on top of each other, and you've got the dust. And maybe you can't even see the dust, but it's in the groove. That is why I bought a machine for it.
Yeah, I just kind of in closing, thank you so much for sitting down for me for an hour and a half and talking about all this stuff. I was curious to pick your brain. I've been wanting to do this for a while. So anything in closing, people should keep an eye out for over on 6 Beers 9 Wives. I know you put out a couple of videos recently, collection updates and stuff like that, but
yeah, little stuff about compilation LPs. I do my videos whenever I want them, when I'm in the mood. I have no real plan for it. I've got a little scrapbook that I write in stuff, but I never do that.
I think there's like 50 good ideas I have for videos that never make it to the YouTube world. So anyway,
yeah, we don't earn money with it, so it should be a fun thing. So whatever comes out of your mind or whatever comes out of your guts at that day, just do it.
Okay, cool. I may in the future, I will probably over the next month or so, maybe sometime in May. If I don't get to it by May, then June. I've kind of talk about some changes I've made to my system. So look for that in the future. It'll be a good sort of companion piece to this. But I do just think like your experience and knowledge here is something that I'm happy to kind of tap into and people to kind of get a chance to see and hear. So anyway, thanks, Jürgen. And
thank you for having me.
Cool. All right. We'll see you guys later.
Listening to my rambling.